Hey everybody, welcome to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, Vision Recording Studios, visionrecordingstudios.com, and here on my YouTube channel. And today, I want to do a quick, well, this may be a little bit longer video. We'll see. I want to do a video that should have been included in the Mixing Made Easy Volume 2.0, Advanced Mixing Concepts and Techniques. If you don't know what that is, go out to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, click on the Made Easy series, and you can see that. This was a video that was kind of mistakenly left out and was pointed out to me by one of my customers, and I wanted to make this and share it on YouTube. So now everyone that purchased Mixing Made Easy 2.0 will see this, along with, it's also a good video for people on the YouTube channel. And it has to deal with reference tracks. So we talked about how important it is to use reference tracks to kind of check your mix against reference tracks to make sure that your stuff sounds similar tonally to a mastered or a commercial released song in the similar genre of music. And this is good for a couple of reasons. One is, again, you want to be able to make sure that from an EQ standpoint, you pick some of the mixes that are, similar styles of music, and you want to make sure tonally that the mix sounds similar, that it can compete with something on the radio. And number two, it's also a good way to kind of, negate some of the issues that you might be having with your mixing environment, your space. Even if you have an acoustically treated room, people in home studios, we all suffer where we have some issues with the acoustics in our room, whether it be the bass is a little off, or usually it's the bass that's usually not accurate, or as accurate as it can be. Even in an acoustically treated home studio, you typically will have some issues with that. So by listening to a commercial mix in your room, on your monitors, or in your headphones, in your environments, and you know what that mix sounds like, the good, the bad, and the ugly as far as your room goes, now you can compare your mix to it. At least you know that you're in the same ballpark, even if your room is a little off, if that makes any sense. So for example, if you have a problem where the bass, it doesn't translate as well because maybe your room isn't tuned right, or you don't have the most ideal mixing environment, and let's say the bass seems to be a little bit, it never seems to be heavy enough. It's always a little thin. Well, by listening to a commercial release in that same environment, the bass is going to sound a little thin. And therefore, you can kind of compare your mix to their mix. And then when you take it out into the real world, the bass may be a little bit more prominent in the commercial mix, and it will be in yours as well. So again, it's just a guideline. It's not a way to copy a mix, but it's a guideline to see, are you even close? And so I want to do that here for you today. So I have a mix that's up. This is the session that was in the Mixing Made Easy Advanced series. And it's all mixed. It's not mastered. Oh, and the other thing we want to kind of keep in mind is that we're going to compare this mix to a couple of mastered tracks, commercial releases. So you got to remember that their mix is going to be, the commercial release is going to be mastered. This is not mastered. And so you want to keep that in mind. So the levels may be a little off. There's probably a little bit more polish on the commercial release than on our mix. But again, we're listening for more tonally, EQ-wise, more than anything else, and making sure that the instrumentation is kind of similarly balanced. So let's take a look at that. So on my master out here, I have a plugin that I did a review on the YouTube channel. You can go check it out by Sample Magic, called Magic AB. This is a great plugin to be able to compare your mix to reference tracks really easily. And you don't need to use this plugin. There are many other plugins out there that probably do something similar. Or you can just insert your reference track onto a new track into your edit screen, and you can kind of mute and solo your mix versus that, if that makes sense. And I also showed you how to do that on my review on this particular plugin. But this is great because you have an A and a B section. Your A, which is lit up here, the A mix is actually your mix in the DAW. If I hit play.
Hope to the merciless cloudless sky.
Okay, that's mix A. Now if I go over to mix B, okay, and that's the mix that we're going to kind of compare to. It's a Red Hot Chili Peppers mix, and that's mix B. You can see the audio waveform up here. You insert your reference tracks. In this particular plugin, you can insert up to 9 different reference tracks. We're not going to do 9. We're just going to do a couple. And the way you add a track is you just come over to this blank space here where it says click to load track. You can load, I can just reload it, I guess. You can reload your song, MP3, WAV, MP4, and there it is. Then you turn it on and off with this radio button. Okay. And then you can, and because the volumes are going to be off, this is a volume input slider here. So typically the master is going to be much, much louder, a commercial release. So what I'll do, like I did over here with the song Scar Tissue, is I lowered it about 9 dB. So I can have a volume, kind of level match the commercial release to my mix. Okay, so I'm doing that over here. Okay.
Push me up against the wall, young tough girl in a push-up bra.
And then on the right-hand side, you can see over here at A and B, you have your output meters, our mix versus the commercial release. So if I play back our mix on A,
my rootstock is bone dry, but I can hear a sound in the distance.
and then I press the radio button here, even though it's playing the commercial mix in the background, you can see the meter. And I try to match them to make sure that before we start getting into how we're going to use this, I want to make sure the levels are somewhat matched. So I'll go from A
And now I feel that I've got no resistance.
to B. Okay, close enough. So we got our levels somewhat matched. So now the way I'm going to kind of use this, let me just shrink down my mixer here. Okay, so we're gonna kind of compare now. This particular song that we're mixing has kind of a clean and kind of a distorted section. So we kind of have this kind of a vibe going.
In the early morning heat, determined to stay on my feet.
In the verses, and when we get to the chorus, we got kind of the big distorted guitar thing happening. Okay, so that's kind of what we have going on here, and what I'll do is maybe I'll just, probably a good idea to play back the very first section of the song here, just so you guys can get a feel for it. If you have not seen this video series and this is the first time you're watching it on YouTube, let's listen to the intro verse and the first chorus, just so you get a feel for the track.
Determined to stay on my feet. It's hard to be a tree in the desert. Expediency makes sense if you let it. Reasoning like that could mean your life. I look in vain hope to the merciless cloudless sky. My leaves are brown and my rootstock is bone dry, but I can hear a sound in the distance, and now I feel that I've got no resistance. It's gonna come and it's gonna run me down like a bulldozer. Bulldozer. It's gonna run me down. It's gonna run me down. My fight is all gone and I got nothing left to give.
Okay, so that's our song, and it just kind of repeats that kind of section as a bridge section. It's a little different, but that's pretty much the song right there. So we're going to use a couple of songs here by the Red Hot Chili Peppers because I felt like, at least in the verse sections, it sounded similar. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of the first verse here, and we're going to kind of play back our mix. I'm going to move my cursor head here, and let's turn on Scar Tissue here. Kind of play this back.
Oh, close your eyes and I'll kiss you, 'cause with the birds I'll share.
Okay, now we're going to play back our section of music here in the verse, and we're just going to flip back and forth between A and B and kind of listen tonally. What are the differences sonically?
In the early morning heat, determined to stay on my
Close your eyes and I'll kiss you, 'cause with the birds I'll share. With the birds I'll share.
dance if you let it. Reasoning like that could mean your life.
The share is so lonely view and push me up
Okay, so what do you hear? So the first thing I hear is the Red Hot Chili Pepper song is a lot thinner sounding to me. Probably a little too thin for my liking. And this is where you got to kind of be careful because, again, I'm not trying to copy the exact mix. I like my mixes in our song here. I want a little bit more low end, a little bit fatter sounding. Okay, but we don't want to overdo it. Our mix has a lot more low end in it. It's a lot warmer than this commercial mix. That's not a bad thing. It just means that it's a little different. And if we're trying to make something that sounds similar to this particular commercial release, we just want to be careful about that. So the first thing I hear is that it's a lot more low end. The second thing I hear is that, and what I like about the commercial mix, is that it's a little bit more open on the top end. Okay, so let's listen to that. It's not it's a little more clarity on the top end. So let's go back, move this back a little bit.
Chase your hill with the birds that shed is that I wish you saw. Sarcastic Mr. Know It All. Close your eyes and I'll kiss you, cause
Determined to stay on my
lonely view and with the
tree in the desert. Expediency make
Okay, we have a lot more kick drum, we have a lot more low end, and they have a lot more clarity on the top end. So let's just start there with the low end. Okay, let's stick with the low end. So again, I don't want to lose all that warmth. I don't want our mix to be as thin as this commercial release. Okay, that's my own personal taste. Your taste can be different. Okay, I'm just showing you a way to how you kind of want to look at this. So the first thing I hear is our kick drum sticks out a lot more. So why don't we, let's go ahead and, oops, didn't want to do that. It's the other thing I don't like about, well, let's save that for another video. Forget what I don't like about the program. Okay, so let's just listen to let's go ahead and let's listen to our kick drum again, and then let's balance it with their kick drum a little bit.
it makes sense if you let it. Reasoning like that could mean your life.
with the birds that shed is so lonely.
My leaves are brown and my rootstock is bone.
In a push-up bra, falling all over my
Down in the distance.
Okay, so it's a little bit lower, not as prominent. It's still thicker. It doesn't have that upper mid-range slap, but I don't want that in our song, okay? But it's just something to compare it to. It's something to think about. It's just, okay, let's kind of compare. This is just one commercial release. You can listen to other ones. Well, when we get to the distorted section, we're going to listen to another song. Now, I picked these two particular commercial releases, and I'm not going to continue to say the name because I don't know if I'm going to get into any copyright problems here with YouTube. I sure as heck hope not. But anyway, you know, I've already mentioned at the beginning of the video who the band is. And you can see on the screen, if I zoom up, which I will, what the name of the songs are. I picked these two songs because I felt our mix when I was mixing this song, it felt like it had that kind of a vibe to it. But however, the reference tracks that you pick don't have to have the same vibe necessarily. It could just be a mix that you really like. Like if you liked, I don't know, say you liked a particular mix engineer, professional mix engineer, say Chris Lord-Alge, let's use him as an example, and you really liked his mixes and you loved what he did on the Green Day records. You know, wonderful mixes. Guy's a pro, right? Guy's the one of the top mix engineers in the world. And you love that some of his mixes on the Green Day records. You want your mix to sound sonically similar to what he did on the Green Day records. Then what would you do? You'd get a Green Day reference track. Okay, and it may be a little thicker sounding than what these two songs are. So you got to try to pick your reference track somewhat, you know, carefully, and pick something you like, pick something that's close to the same genre. If you could, you wouldn't pick a jazz track to compare it to this. That's obvious, right? So it's, you know, keep that in mind. Okay. So I don't want our track to be as thin as this track, but I do like the open on the top end. So I'm also going to play a little bit with the bass. The bass is really heavy in our song compared to this track.
And now I feel that I've got no resistance.
I'm falling all over myself
Down.
your hill, cause with the birds that shed is
Okay, so I'm going to lower our bass just a hair. You can switch his plugins whenever you highlight a new track. I don't like that. Okay. All right, so that's what we're going to do there. Now let's listen to see how is our low end starting to feel.
Bulldozer.
Go back to the
Early
verse.
morning heat. expedient.
Okay, it's better. Now we got to deal with the upper top ends because that's the only way we're going to get this mix to sound open on the top. We got to deal with that. And I have a perfect cure for that. At least I feel it's a perfect cure. Let's close this for a second. So on my master bus, one plugin that I use an awful lot, and there's a couple of companies that make this emulation. You can use any EQ, but I tend to like this one. Is I'm going to use at the very last plugin. After my tape machine, I'm going to use the Pultec EQ P1A. Okay, Tube EQ, famously EQ. I have a video of this about on my YouTube channel. Waves also makes the Puig Tech, which is the Jack Joseph Puig emulation of this. Wonderful. And I think Softtube Tube Tech, I think they make an emulation of this. Anyway, it's a tube style EQ, which tends to give a real nice, warm, open, airy top end, and a nice, rich, low warmth on the bottom end. You can put anything through this, any instrument, any kind of material. It never sounds bad. I tend to use this a lot on snare drums, lead vocals, and in a case like this, I like running mixes through it. Now, one thing about the Pultec is one of the things it's famous for, because it's a tube style EQ, is that without even boosting or cutting anything in the EQ portion of this, just running the signal through the EQ, the emulation of the circuitry in the tubes gives a nice warmth and a kind of an openness to the sound. And I'm going to demonstrate that for you. So I'm going to shut it off here. Okay, you can see here that there's no boosting, okay, no attenuating on any of the frequencies, okay, and it's off right now. So I'm going to play back our mix, and then I'm just going to turn this on by doing this, and you'll see the little light illuminate here, and you just listen to the upper mid-range.
Burning in the early morning heat, determined to stay on my feet. It's hard to be a tree in the desert. Expediency makes sense if you let it. Reasoning like that could mean your life. I look in vain, hope to the merciless cloud, the sky.
Okay, so hopefully if you're listening to this on a good set of headphones and or studio monitors, you should hear that the upper, like kind of the mid-range, a little bit more towards the upper mid, just kind of lift up a little bit and kind of open up the cloud, so to speak, a tiny bit. Okay, that gives us a little bit more of an open sound. So now let's compare that. I'm going to leave this up because if I don't, it's going to close on me. Let's see if we can get this thing happening where I can get both these plugins on the screen, and let's kind of, and we'll pin this. Okay. So now let's listen to our mix versus the commercial release. Let's start with our mix. Let's start with the commercial mix.
With the birds I'll share. With the birds I'll share this lonely view. And with the birds I'll share this lonely view. And push me up against the
Determined to stay on my feet. It's hard to be a
with the birds I'll share this lonely.
if you let it. Reasoning like that could mean your life.
Okay, it's better, but we still need a little bit more open on the top end, and we got to deal with the low end a little bit more. Okay, so what I'm going to do on this Pultec is I'm going to go ahead around 8K. This is the high frequency selector. Let's start around, I don't know, around 8, 10K. And let's broaden our Q here, and then let's boost this up a little bit and see what we get for an open airiness.
I look in vain, hope to the merciless cloud, the sky.
Before.
My leaves are brown and my rootstock is bone dry.
Opens it wide open, right? Okay, so that might be a little bit too much. Gotta be careful with the vocal because of the sibilance now.
But I can hear a sound in the distance, and now I feel that I've got no resistance. It's gonna come and it's gonna run me down, like a burning in the early morning heat. Determined to stay on my feet. It's hard to be a tree in the desert. Expediency makes sense if you let it. Reasoning like that could mean your
sarcastic Mr. Know-It-All. Close your eyes and now
cloud the sky. My leaves are brown and my rootstock
it's a lonely view. And with the birds that share this
distance, and now I feel feel that I've got no resistance. It's gonna come and it's gonna run me down.
Okay, so now our upper mid-range is a lot closer to that commercial release, and it's starting to sound better. Now, if we didn't do this process, part of the problem with this commercial release, again, it's really thin on the bottom end. But I'm not listening to that. I'm listening to the top end. Now, if I didn't do this process and I didn't go through these reference tracks process, I would have left this mix, printed it, sent it off, and not even consider putting a Pultec on the end of the stereo bus. Okay, I like what this Pultec is doing to it. So by me using reference tracks, it allows me to kind of, again, it gives me perspective. It doesn't mean I'm trying to copy the commercial release. It just tells me that I'm trying to get, I'm listening to that compared to my mix. I'm saying, okay, where can I enhance my mix? How much closer do I want it to get? And I like the fact that our mixes now has a little bit more openness to it, where it was a little bit more warm sounding or darker sounding. And I love the way that sounded, but I'm kind of liking this a little bit better now. So let's listen to their mix.
I have to Mr. Know It All. I'll close your eyes and I'll kiss you, 'cause with the birds I'll share. With the birds I'll share.
Determined to stay on my feet.
It's a lonely view and push me up.
Expediency makes sense if you let it. Reasoning like that could mean your life.
Before the EQ.
Out the sky.
After.
My leaves are brown and my rootstock is bone dry. But I can hear.
Now we still got a lot more low end. Maybe we could tame it a little bit more. Maybe we could do it right here in the Pultec. So let's go to 60 hertz and let's attenuate some of this. Let's just see what happens.
Burning in the early morning heat. Determined to stay
Before
on
the
my
Pultec?
feet. It's hard to be a tree in the desert. Expediency makes sense if you let it. Reasoning like that.
'Cause with the birds I'll close your eyes and I'll kiss you. 'Cause with the birds
Out the sky. My leaves are brown and my
view and
dry. But I can hear a sound in the distance. And now I feel that
up against the wall, young tuck.
and it's gonna run me down like a bulldozer.
Okay, we're a lot closer. And again, I think with the low end, although we still got more beef in our song, it's a little bit tamed, a little bit more tamed than it was. Not nearly as thin as the commercial release, but we don't want it that thin. At least I don't. Now, you may be doing your mix, and you may be saying, I want that to be just like the commercial release. That's fine. You can do that. I mean, that's, again, there's no right or wrong to any of this stuff. It's just a matter of what your personal taste is. Or if you're dealing with a client, and this was a client's track, what is their personal taste? So one of the tips I use for all you mixing engineers out there who actually do clients' music, before I even start a project, I ask them for some reference tracks. Give me some music, couple of songs, 2-3 songs of stuff that you like sonically that are close to your genre of music. Let them do the work for you. Let them tell you what they like before you give them your mix, because that will solve 80% of your problems, and it'll keep you from going back and doing revision after revision after revision. Okay, so one of the tricks is, getting reference tracks. And if they don't have one necessarily off the top of their head, you can say, well, what kind of music do you like? Oh, I like The Police, again, an example. Oh, okay, what about this song? And maybe you can kind of suggest some songs to them to say, well, do you want your music to take on this kind of a vibe, this kind of a tonal character? What do you want? And that way, again, it saves you a lot of time as a mix engineer on the back end. And normally, I've been doing this for years like this. And what happens is I'll send a mix off to a client, and I may get 1 or 2 small tweaks that need to be done. It's 95% of the way there when they hear my first mix. Is that because I'm a masterful mix engineer? No, it just means that I was paying attention. I got reference tracks. I knew what they wanted their song to sound like prior to me mixing, and therefore I'm using reference tracks to kind of get close, and then we give them the final say, obviously, and they'll make a couple of tweaks here and there. And by the second revision, I don't think I've ever had a client ask me for more than 2 small revisions ever in 10 years, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that I use reference tracks pretty heavily. Okay, so it is extremely important, and so I want you to kind of keep that in mind. So again, now that we got kind of the clean guitar kind of verse section together, let's see now what the distorted guitars. I got another song here. by the same band. Okay. Great song. Okay, again, just getting more to our distorted sections of our song to kind of just see, again, it's different. It's not the same kind of music. This is not a real heavy song. Ours is a little heavier. But just to hear, where is our guitar volume compared to theirs? Just trying to get a feel for tonally. Are we in the ballpark now that we made some adjustments and we kind of built it around that verse section? Let's see what our chorus sounds like compared to what they got going on. So here's ours.
Hit me, you can't hurt me. Suck my kiss. Kiss me, people, hurt me.
Down, it's gonna run me. Goes up.
Me, sweet secret bliss. Your mouth was made to
Goes up.
Okay, that sounds pretty good. That sounds a little bit more in line with each other than what the verses sounded like. Now remember, we put this Pultec on the master bus, so anything we affected across the whole mix, obviously. So our guitars are going to sound a little bit brighter now than they did before, which is okay because our guitars probably sounded a little on the darker side, or warmer side as I like to call it. And it's a little bit more open as compared to the commercial release. So if that wasn't the case, you could go ahead and EQ individual instruments differently. You can lower or raise the volume differently if you felt you had a big volume difference. Like if our guitars were so much louder than the guitars in the commercial release, I'd go over to the guitar tracks and lower them. It's pretty common sense. But this sounds pretty good. This sounds pretty well balanced. And what you're going to find is as you become better at mixing, you're going to find that when you pull up the reference track, like I did before, I didn't do this before I hit record here today. The first time I heard the commercial release against my mix was just when we did it here in real time. You're going to find that your mix is going to be closer and closer, and you're going to need to have fewer adjustments. Why? Because you're going to get used to listening to reference tracks in your environment. You're going to know kind of what the low end's supposed to sound like. You're going to kind of know what the guitar's tones are going to sound like in the overall volume. And you're going to start to find that you're going to have minimal tweaks. And usually it's going to be to the point where maybe you're just putting a little bit of darkness or warmth or a little bit more openness on the master bus like what we did here, because overall your individual elements of your mix are going to sound a lot more balanced because you're going to get better at the craft of mixing because you're going to get used to listening to commercial releases in your environment, and therefore you're not going to have as many adjustments to do. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So again, I'm not going to make any more adjustments here. I think this sounds pretty good. And again, we're comparing it to a commercial master, not to a commercial, just a rough mix like our song is. Our song is not mastered yet. Okay, so you got to keep in mind that once we go to mastering, there's going to be a little bit more polish put on it. Now, what we're doing here, someone's going to say to me, well, shouldn't we just save this kind of tonal EQ thing at mastering? Isn't that what mastering is in a sense? Well, yeah, it is in a way. What is a mastering engineer going to do? They're going to use EQ and compression on the stereo mix. Same thing as like putting this on the master bus. They're going to tweak it. And I guess you could say, yeah, I guess you could just save it for mastering. But I'm always of the opinion, and the way I try to teach my students is that I don't save anything for mastering. Whether I'm the mastering engineer or not, I want to get the mix as close to the final product as possible, with the only exception I'm going to put on this is the overall volume of the track from a limiting standpoint. I don't put a limiter on my stereo bus here because I want to give the mastering engineer enough headroom to be able to play around with it. But from an EQ and a compression standpoint, my goal is to send it to the mastering engineer and him go, there's nothing to do. It's done. I'm not going to touch it. I'll put a limiter on it. EQ, compression sounds great. Now, does that happen all the time? I wish I could say that it did. I wish I was that good, guys, but I'm not. But I want to get it close. I want to get it as close to a finished product as possible. So I'm going to do all the EQ and all the compression and everything I need to do in the mix now. Let the mastering engineer just put some limiting on it. and give him or her a different perspective with a second set of ears listening to reference tracks. Because what I would do with this song, if I was sending it off to a mastering house, is I would send them these reference tracks and go, here's kind of what we're going for. If this is what the client had asked me for, or if the client gave me another reference track, this is what it was. Excuse me. So that way he or she has a point of reference as well. But again, I want to get the mix as close as I can. So I hope this video was helpful. This is how I would use reference tracks. Again, I apologize to all my Mixing Made Easy customers that bought 2.0 and did not get this in there. It was totally my fault, and I want to thank the customer, and I won't mention his name because I don't know if he wants me to, but I want to thank him especially for pointing it out. Because honestly, in doing that series, it was a long process. I had a release date I had to hit, and honestly, it just slipped my mind, and that's bad. My bad. And I'm glad he pointed it out because, hey, I want to get better at this too and create better products for my customers. And so I thought I would do this, put this up on the YouTube channel, so now all my Mixing Made Easy customers can watch this. I will send them the link to this video, and people that are not part of the Mixing Made Easy family yet can get kind of a freebie here. And so this is reference tracks. This is how I would kind of use them. And for more tips, tricks, mixing, training, my services, blah, 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 yada, 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 go over to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, visionrecordingstudios.com. Check out what I got going on there. And I hope to talk to you guys all soon. So again, thanks so much for the help. Thanks so much for pointing out my little blunder here. And I hope this reference track video was helpful. Until next time, this is David from homerecordingmadeeasy.com. And I will talk to y'all soon, guys. Take care.